"Mom, you look too poor for my wedding photos," my daughter whispered while the photographer adjusted his camera, and for a moment, even the white roses behind her seemed to lose their color. I stood beside the garden arch at the Fairmont Hotel in Columbus, Ohio, holding my small silver purse with both hands, careful not to wrinkle the card inside it. The card was for Lauren, my only daughter, the girl I had raised after her father died, the girl whose fever I had cooled with washcloths at 2 in the morning. The girl I had driven across town for piano lessons in a car that rattled every time it passed 50 miles an hour. She stood in front of me now in a wedding gown that probably cost more than my living room furniture, her blonde hair pinned into soft curls, her makeup perfect, her smile polished for everyone except me. "It's just that the pictures need to look elegant," she added, lowering her voice but not enough. I looked down at my dress. Pale gray, knee-length, bought from a department store clearance rack, then altered by my own hands at the kitchen table under a yellow lamp. I had pressed it twice that morning. My shoes were old, yes, but I had polished them until the leather shone. My pearls were not real, but they were the last gift my husband, Robert, had given me before his heart gave out 12 years ago. I had worn them because Lauren once told me they made me look like someone from an old movie. That was before she started saying things like image, and presentation, and our kind of people. Caleb Morrison, the photographer, paused with one hand on his camera strap. He was a tall man with dark hair threaded with gray, and the calm expression of someone used to watching families pretend to be kinder than they were. He glanced from Lauren to me, then back to the camera in his hands. He had hurt her. I knew he had. But I also knew how weddings worked. Everyone protects the bride, even when the bride is the one holding the knife. "I can stand aside," I said quietly. Lauren exhaled as if I had finally understood something simple. "Thank you, Mom. Please don't make this emotional." Emotional. That word landed harder than the first sentence. I had spent 68 years learning how not to be emotional in public. I did not cry when Robert's hospital bill arrived 3 days after the funeral. I did not cry when I sold my wedding china to help Lauren cover her last semester at Ohio State. I did not cry when she stopped calling me Mama and started introducing me as my mother, Margaret, like I was a distant acquaintance she had been forced to acknowledge. So I stepped back from the arch, away from the bridesmaids in champagne satin, away from Andrew's family in tailored suits, away from my daughter's perfect frame. The June sun warmed my shoulders, but my hands had gone cold around my purse. Behind me, someone laughed near the cocktail tables. Glasses clinked. A violinist began playing a soft version of a love song I remembered from the radio years ago. Everything around us was beautiful. That was the cruelest part. Lauren turned toward Caleb and lifted her chin. "Can we do the formal family shots now?" she asked, as if I had never been standing there at all. Caleb did not move right away. His eyes dropped to the clipboard resting on the stone bench beside him, the one with the schedule, the shot list, and the contract tucked beneath a clear plastic cover. I noticed his thumb pressed lightly against the top page. He looked at my name tag, then at my face. Mrs. Margaret Whitaker. Not staff. Not a mistake. Not a woman who wandered into the wrong wedding. I gave him the smallest shake of my head, the kind that means not now. Because I had not come to my daughter's wedding to embarrass her. I had come because, despite everything, some part of me still believed a mother belonged somewhere in the background of her child's happiest day. Even if it was only near the edge. Even if no one wanted her centered. I walked toward the last row of white chairs, where my seat had been placed behind a tall floral arrangement that blocked most of the aisle. On the chair beside mine sat the wedding program, thick cream paper with gold lettering. Lauren and Andrew Hayes. Beneath the names in smaller script it said, "Together with their families." I stared at those words for a long second. Together with their families. Then I folded the program neatly in half and placed it in my purse beside the card I had written that morning. "For my beautiful daughter, from the first woman who loved you." I did not know yet that before the sun went down, Caleb would open that contract in front of everyone. I did not know Lauren's face would turn pale when she saw whose signature was on the final page. I only knew that my daughter had just removed me from her wedding photos because I looked too poor to be remembered, and I had smiled because she had no idea who had paid to preserve the memory. The ceremony began with music so soft it almost felt like an apology. I sat behind the tall white arrangement Lauren had chosen for the aisle, close enough to hear the vows but far enough that no camera would catch my face unless someone tried very hard. From where I sat, I could see only pieces of my daughter. The curve of her shoulder, the edge of her veil, the hand of her new husband, Andrew Hayes, holding hers beneath the arch. People around me dabbed their eyes with folded tissues. Eleanor Hayes, Andrew's mother, sat in the front row with her back straight and her chin lifted, dressed in a lavender suit that looked like it had been made just for her. I wondered if Lauren had ever looked at her and thought she matched the pictures. I folded my hands in my lap and tried to listen. Marriage is a promise, the minister said. A promise to stand beside each other in sickness and health, in plenty and in want. In plenty and in want. Those words stayed with me longer than they should have. I had known want. I had known the kind of want that makes a woman count apples at the grocery store and put 2 back because the electric bill was due. I had known the kind that makes a mother say she is not hungry so her child can have the last piece of chicken. Lauren had been too young to understand those years. Maybe that was my fault. I had protected her from every sharp edge until she grew up believing comfort had appeared by magic. When the minister asked who gave this woman to be married, Andrew's father rose proudly and spoke for his side. No one looked back at me. There was no question for the mother who had packed school lunches, signed permission slips, waited outside dance classes, and slept in a recliner beside a hospital bed when Lauren had pneumonia at 9 years old. The moment passed cleanly, like I had never belonged to it. After the ceremony, guests moved toward the patio for cocktails. I waited until the row in front of me emptied before standing. My knees felt stiff, partly from sitting and partly from holding myself too still. A young usher smiled at me with practiced kindness and asked if I needed help finding the reception hall. I told him I was fine. He looked at the program in my hand and then at my dress, as if trying to decide whether I was a guest or someone's aunt who had been invited out of obligation. I followed the crowd through glass doors into the courtyard. The hotel had set up high tables with white linens, trays of tiny crab cakes, sparkling water with lemon slices, and a bar where men in navy suits laughed too loudly. Everywhere I turned, people were taking pictures. Bridesmaids leaning cheek to cheek. Cousins holding champagne flutes. College friends pulling Lauren into the center of every frame. I stood near a planter of hydrangeas and watched my daughter glow for everyone else. She knew how to be warm when she wanted to be. She touched Eleanor's arm when she laughed. She leaned her head against Andrew's shoulder. She kissed the cheek of an older aunt from his side of the family and called her beautiful. For a moment, I wondered what it would feel like to receive that version of her again. Then one of the bridesmaids, a slim young woman with copper hair and a clipboard, approached me. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Are you with the hotel?" I looked at her. "No, dear. I am with the bride." Her smile tightened. Not cruel exactly, but embarrassed. "Oh, I am sorry. I just thought, because you were standing over here by yourself." I nodded because there was nothing useful to say. Being alone has a way of making people assume you are waiting to serve someone. A few minutes later, I heard Lauren's voice behind the hedge of flowers near the patio entrance. "Just keep her out of the main shots for now," she said. "She gets overwhelmed, and I do not want her uncomfortable." Another voice answered, "That is thoughtful of you." Thoughtful. I almost smiled. Lauren had always known how to wrap rejection in a ribbon. She was not excluding me. She was protecting me. She was not ashamed. She was being considerate. I looked down at my purse and rubbed my thumb over the clasp, feeling the tiny scratch in the metal from the day Robert bought it for me at a mall outside Dayton. We had not had much money then, but he had insisted. "A woman should have one thing she does not have to apologize for," he had said. I carried that purse for weddings, funerals, graduations, and every day I needed to remember I had once been cherished without conditions. Across the courtyard, Caleb Morrison was photographing Lauren with Andrew's family. He worked quietly, moving people with a calm hand and a soft voice. At one point his eyes found mine. He did not smile. He only gave a small nod, the kind that said he saw more than he was supposed to. I looked away first. A waiter passed with a tray of sparkling cider, and I took a glass just to have something to hold. The bubbles rose and disappeared before they reached the top. That seemed about right. Then I saw the seating chart near the ballroom doors. Gold frame. White cards. Perfect calligraphy. I found my name at table 17, close to the kitchen entrance, between a retired co-worker of Andrew's father and someone listed only as guest. The front tables were for immediate family. I read that phrase twice. Immediate family. A staff member came by to adjust one of the cards and noticed me staring. Beautiful setup, is it not? She said. Yes, I answered. It is beautiful. And it was. That was the hardest part. Nothing looked wrong unless you knew where to look. A mother could be erased in a room full of flowers, and everyone would still call it elegant. By the time the ballroom doors opened, I had already learned how the evening was going to work. I was welcome where I could be hidden. I was useful where no one had to explain me. I was family only in the parts of the day that did not need to be photographed. The ballroom was colder than the courtyard, cooled by vents hidden behind gold-trimmed walls. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, scattering light across the polished floor. The tables were dressed in ivory linens, each one crowned with tall glass vases filled with white roses and pale green eucalyptus. Lauren had always loved things that looked expensive even when she could not afford them. As a little girl, she used to press her face against boutique windows at the mall and whisper which dress she would buy when she was rich. I would stand beside her with a grocery list in my purse and $12 left until payday, telling her she had good taste. I never told her good taste can become hunger if no one teaches you gratitude. Table 17 was exactly where the seating chart had promised. Near the kitchen doors. Close enough to hear the swing and thump as servers moved in and out with trays. Far enough from the sweetheart table that Lauren would not have to see me unless she looked on purpose. My place card read Mrs. Margaret Whittaker in the same gold lettering as everyone else. For a moment I appreciated that small mercy. At least paper did not know how to be ashamed of me. The man seated to my right introduced himself as Frank, a former business partner of Andrew's father. The woman to my left was his second wife, Marjorie, who smelled faintly of gardenias and asked me how I knew the couple. I am Lauren's mother, I said. Marjorie blinked once. Only once. Then she recovered with the kind of smile polite people use when they have been caught thinking the wrong thing. Oh, how lovely. Frank glanced toward the front of the room, then back at me. I assumed the bride's mother was seated up there. So did I said and took a sip of water. The ice tapped softly against the glass. It sounded louder than it should have. During dinner, speeches began. Andrew's best man told a story about college football games and late-night pizza. Eleanor spoke about welcoming Lauren into the Hayes family, about elegance, tradition, and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who lift you higher. She did not mention me. Lauren's maid of honor spoke next. She cried prettily and said Lauren had become the woman she was through determination, taste, and knowing exactly what kind of life she wanted. Still, no mention of the mother who had worked weekends at the public library and evenings doing alterations so Lauren could have braces, school trips, and the blue prom dress she had cried over in 10th grade. I looked at my plate. The salmon was arranged over a neat bed of wild rice, with asparagus crossed like ribbons on top. It was beautiful food. I could not taste any of it. Memory has a way of arriving without invitation. One minute, I was sitting beneath chandeliers at my daughter's wedding. The next, I was back in our old kitchen in Dayton, standing in front of a refrigerator that hummed too loudly, counting envelopes on the counter. Rent, utilities, Lauren's field trip, Robert's prescriptions. After Robert died, there were months when the numbers did not make sense no matter how many times I added them. I took extra shifts at the library. I hemmed dresses for women from church. I cleaned the office of a dentist on Saturday mornings because it paid cash and no one asked questions. Lauren never knew how close we came to losing the house. I made sure of that. Children should not have to carry their parents' fear. But maybe I had carried too much for her. Maybe I had hidden the cost so well that she grew up thinking nothing had cost me anything. When Lauren was 17, she wanted a senior portrait package we could not afford. The photographer charged $400, which might as well have been $4,000 then. She tried to pretend she did not care, but I found her crying in the laundry room with the brochure folded in her hands. That week, I sold the gold bracelet Robert had given me on our 10th anniversary. Lauren had her portraits taken in a sunflower field outside town. She looked beautiful, young, hopeful. I kept one wallet-sized photo in my Bible for years. She never asked how I paid for them. I never told her. That was the pattern of our life. She needed. I found a way. She dreamed. I made room. She rose. I stayed underneath, holding the ladder steady. A soft tapping against. A microphone brought me back to the ballroom. Lauren stood beside Andrew, glowing under the warm lights, ready to thank everyone. Her voice was sweet and practiced. She thanked Eleanor and Andrew's father for their generosity. She thanked her bridesmaids for supporting her vision. She thanked the planner for making the day flawless. Then she paused and looked around the room. My heart lifted in spite of myself. It was foolish. I know that now. But hope is stubborn in mothers. It lives even after dignity tells it to sit down. Lauren smiled toward the front tables. And most of all, I am grateful to be surrounded by people who believed I deserved something beautiful. Applause filled the room. I sat very still. Frank beside me clapped politely. Marjorie reached for her wine. No one noticed that my hands had stopped moving. Something beautiful. That was what I had said to Lauren a year earlier when she called me crying about the photographer she wanted. Every daughter deserves beautiful memories. Those had been my words. My exact words. Lauren had taken the sentence, polished it, and returned it to the room without my name attached. I looked across the ballroom and found Caleb standing near the wall, camera lowered at his side. He was not photographing that moment. He was watching me. I gave him nothing. No tears. No anger. Just the face of a woman finally understanding that silence can be stolen too. Then the applause faded, and Lauren leaned into Andrew's arm as if the whole room belonged to her. I folded my napkin carefully and placed it beside my plate. For the first time that day, I stopped wondering why my daughter had pushed me to the edge. I began wondering how long I had been helping her do it. The first dance began after dinner, and the ballroom softened into a glow of gold light and slow music. Lauren and Andrew moved across the floor as if they had practiced every step. Maybe they had. Lauren had always believed the world rewarded rehearsal. She knew where to place her chin for a photograph. She knew how to laugh without opening her mouth too wide. She knew how to look humble while receiving admiration. I watched her from table 17 while the guests gathered close with their phones raised. For a few minutes she looked almost like the little girl I remembered. Not in her face, which had become sharper with age and ambition, but in the way her fingers rested lightly on Andrew's shoulder. When she was small, she used to hold the edge of my sleeve that same way in crowded places, trusting I would not let her get lost. I wondered when she had stopped trusting my hand and started being ashamed of it. After the dance, the band moved into something brighter, and people drifted toward the bar and dessert table. I stood because my back had begun to ache from sitting so stiffly. Near the hallway outside the ballroom, a long table displayed framed photographs from Lauren and Andrew's engagement session. There they were in a vineyard, on a stone bridge, beside a black car polished so well the clouds reflected in the hood. Lauren looked graceful in every picture, wrapped in cream and beige and soft filtered light. I looked at those photographs and remembered the day she sent them to me by text. No message, just 12 images. I had replied, "You look beautiful, sweetheart." She answered with a heart emoji 3 hours later. That was how she loved me now, in symbols small enough not to require effort. As I stood there, Eleanor Hayes appeared beside me with a glass of white wine in her hand. She looked at the photographs, then at me. "They turned out well," she said. "Yes, they did. Lauren has a very refined eye. She always liked beautiful things." Eleanor smiled, but there was something careful in it. "She mentioned you prefer a simpler life." I turned my head slightly. A simpler life? Well, you know, small-town values, practical choices, that sort of thing. I knew exactly what Lauren had told her. Not the whole truth. Never the whole truth. Probably something softened and rearranged until my struggles sounded like a preference. Until poverty sounded like quaintness. Until sacrifice sounded like lack of ambition. "I lived simply because I had a child to raise," I said. Eleanor's smile faltered. Only for a second. Then Lauren appeared behind us, quick as a curtain closing. "There you are," she said to Eleanor, slipping an arm through hers. "Andrew wants a photo with you by the cake." Then she looked at me. The smile stayed on her mouth but never reached her eyes. "Mom, why do not you go enjoy your table? You should not be standing so much." There it was again. Concern used like a locked door. I should not stand too long. I should not get overwhelmed. I should not be in the main photos. I should not speak where important people might hear me. Eleanor patted my arm as if I were delicate. How thoughtful, she said. Lauren guided her away before I could answer. I watched them cross the room together, two women in expensive dresses, moving easily through a world I had paid to make beautiful but was not allowed to enter fully. A server came by with coffee and I accepted a cup. It was too hot, so I held it without drinking. The warmth spread through the paper sleeve into my fingers. That small heat steadied me. At the cake table, Caleb was adjusting his lens. Lauren and Andrew stood hand in hand beside a 5-tier white cake, decorated with sugar flowers. Eleanor stood close, smiling proudly. Andrew's father straightened his tie. The planner waved for a few more family members to gather. I waited. No one called my name. Not Lauren. Not the planner. Not anyone. Caleb looked over the top of his camera. His eyes moved across the group, then landed on me near the hallway. "Bride's mother?" he asked, politely enough that it sounded like a normal correction. The words cut through the chatter. Several heads turned. Lauren's shoulders stiffened before she even looked at me. For one brief second, the room showed me the truth plainly. It was not that people had forgotten me. It was that Lauren had hoped no one would notice I was missing. "Oh," she said, with a small laugh that did not belong to happiness. "We are keeping this one tight. Just the immediate group." The planner glanced at her notes. Caleb did not lower the camera. "Understood," he said. "But the shot list includes the bride with her mother near the cake." Lauren's face changed so slightly most people would have missed it. I did not. Mothers see the first shadow before anyone else notices the weather turning. "We can skip that," Lauren said. "It is not necessary." Necessary. I had been necessary when tuition was due. Necessary when rent was short. Necessary when she needed someone to alter a dress overnight, watch her dog for a weekend, mail forgotten documents, or listen while she cried about bridesmaids who disappointed her. But in a ballroom full of white roses and polished silver, I had become unnecessary. Andrew looked from Lauren to me, confused. "Your mom does not want a picture?" he asked. Lauren answered too quickly. "She gets uncomfortable with attention." I set my coffee down on the photograph table. The cup made a soft sound against the wood. "No," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried far enough. "I do not get uncomfortable with attention." The group went still. Lauren's eyes sharpened. "Mom, please." Just 2 words. Soft enough for guests to mistake them for tenderness. Sharp enough for me to understand the warning. I looked at her standing beside the cake, surrounded by the life she wanted, and I finally saw the bargain she had made. She could accept everything I gave her as long as she did not have to be seen receiving it from me. Caleb lowered his camera. Not much. Just enough. Then he looked down at the clipboard tucked beneath his arm. The clear plastic cover caught the chandelier light. I saw the corner of the contract beneath it. My signature was inside that folder. My name. My check. My year of quiet planning. Lauren did not know that. Not yet. So I stepped back toward the wall and smoothed the front of my gray dress. "All right," I said. "Take the picture she wants." Lauren relaxed, thinking she had won another small battle. But Caleb did not lift the camera again right away. He opened the clipboard. And for the first time that day, my daughter looked afraid of a piece of paper. Caleb opened the clipboard slowly. Not with drama, not with anger, but with the calm care of a man who had spent years protecting records from people who preferred feelings over facts. The ballroom did not go silent all at once. Silence arrived in layers. First, the planner stopped waving her hand near the cake. Then Andrew's father lowered his glass. Then Eleanor turned her head slightly, the way women like her do when they sense something improper is about to happen near expensive flowers. Lauren kept smiling. That was what she did when she was cornered. She smiled harder. "Caleb," she said, her voice light and thin, "we really need to stay on schedule." "Yes, we do," he answered. "That is why I need to confirm something before we continue." He looked down at the papers. I could see the top sheet from where I stood near the wall. The corner of my own signature peeked out beneath the plastic cover. Margaret Elaine Whitaker. My hand had trembled when I signed that contract 11 months earlier. Not because I regretted the money, but because it was more than I had spent on myself in years. The full photography package, the engagement session, the wedding day coverage, the family album, the reception slideshow, the archival prints, the mother and daughter portrait before the ceremony, if Lauren wanted one. That last line had been mine. Caleb had asked whether I wanted to make it mandatory. I had said no. Love should not have to be enforced by a clause. I remembered sitting across from him in his studio on a rainy Tuesday morning, my umbrella dripping beside my chair, my purse balanced on my knees. His studio smelled like coffee and polished wood. Large wedding portraits covered the walls. Daughters laughing with mothers. Fathers holding back tears. Grandparents framed in soft light. I had looked at those pictures and thought, maybe this is how Lauren and I find our way back to each other. Maybe one beautiful day can remind her I was there before the world started clapping for her. Caleb had been kind. He had explained the price gently, as if giving me permission to choose something smaller. I chose the largest package anyway. I used the money from a certificate of deposit Robert and I had opened years before, the one we had called our someday fund. Someday we would take a trip to Maine. Someday we would replace the porch. Someday we would stop worrying so much. After Robert died, someday became a drawer full of paperwork and a balance I was afraid to touch. Then Lauren called crying about wedding expenses, saying the photographer she loved was out of reach. So I made someday into her wedding gift. Now that gift sat in Caleb's hands while my daughter looked at it like it might burn her reputation. Is there a problem? Andrew asked. He was not angry. Not yet. Only confused. That made it worse for Lauren. Confusion still left room for truth. Caleb turned one page. The formal family shot list includes several combinations that were requested by the client of record. Lauren laughed softly. I am the bride. I gave you the final timeline. You gave me the event timeline, Caleb said. The contract and payment authorization are under another name. Eleanor's posture changed. Just slightly. Her polite face sharpened. Lauren's eyes flicked toward me, then away. I stayed where I was. I did not step forward. I did not rescue her from the moment. For once, I let silence do the work I had always done for her. Can we discuss this later? Lauren asked. Her voice had lost some of its sweetness. I do not want paperwork brought into my reception. Caleb's tone remained even. I understand. But because you are requesting changes to paid deliverables, I need approval from the person who signed for them. Paid deliverables. Such plain words. So clean. They cut through satin, roses, music, and social manners without raising their voice. Andrew looked at Lauren. Who signed for them? Lauren did not answer. She looked at me, then really looked at me, not at my dress or my shoes or the purse I had carried too many years. For the first time all day, she saw a possibility she had not arranged. Caleb lifted the top page just enough to read from it. The client of record is Mrs. Margaret Elaine Whitaker. The name landed in the room with more weight than any toast. Frank from table 17 turned in his chair. Marjorie's hand froze halfway to her necklace. The planner stared at her clipboard as if it had personally betrayed her. Andrew's face changed slowly, not with embarrassment, but with understanding. Eleanor looked from the contract to me, and I watched her calculate the distance between the woman she had dismissed and the money that had helped build the evening around her. Lauren went pale beneath her makeup, only a shade. Enough for a mother to notice. Mom, she said, and the word sounded smaller than it had all day. I had waited years to hear softness in her voice again. It hurt to realize softness could be fear wearing a familiar coat. Caleb held the paper steady. There is also a specific request here for a mother and daughter portrait before the ceremony, optional upon the bride's consent. He paused. That portrait was skipped. The room seemed to hold its breath. Lauren swallowed. I did not know she paid for all that. There it was. Not I did not know she cared. Not I did not know it mattered. Not I should not have treated her that way. Only money. Only the part of love that could be proven with a receipt. I walked forward then slowly, because my knees were not as steady as I wanted them to be. The chandeliers made the room too bright. Every face turned toward me. For 68 years I had hated being stared at. That night I let them look. I stopped beside Caleb, close enough to see the ink of my signature, and placed one hand lightly on the clipboard. Yes, I said. I paid for it. Lauren opened her mouth, but I looked at Andrew instead. Your wife wanted beautiful memories. Then I turned to my daughter. And I thought a mother was still allowed to give her child something beautiful, even if she was not beautiful enough to stand in the picture. For one long second no one spoke. The band had stopped between songs, leaving only the soft clatter from the kitchen doors and the hum of the air conditioning above us. Lauren stared at me as if I had said something cruel. That was the strange thing about people who take your kindness for granted. The first time you name the cost, they hear it as an attack. Mom, she said again, softer now, but not gentle. Do not do this here. I looked at her carefully. Her veil had slipped slightly over one shoulder. A small pearl pin near her ear caught the chandelier light. She looked beautiful. She looked expensive. She looked like a woman who had spent years learning how to be admired, and almost no time learning how to be grateful. I am not doing anything, I said. I am answering a question. Andrew took half a step back from the cake table. He looked at Caleb, then at the contract, then at Lauren. You told me your mother could not contribute, he said. His voice was low, not accusing, not loud. That made the room listen harder. Lauren's mouth opened, closed, opened again. I said she did not need to, she replied. That is different. No, Andrew said. It is not. Eleanor cleared her throat, the kind of small sound meant to restore order without admitting anything had gone wrong. Perhaps this is a family matter best handled privately. I turned to her. She held my gaze for half a second before looking away. All evening she had spoken around me, over me, and through me. Now she wanted privacy because the truth had become inconvenient in public. I agree, I said. It should have been handled privately when my daughter asked me to disappear from her wedding photographs. A few guests shifted in their seats. Someone set down a fork. The sound was tiny, but it seemed to echo. Lauren's eyes flashed. I never asked you to disappear. I looked at Caleb. He said nothing. He did not need to. The contract in his hand was not the only record in the room. There were witnesses now. There were words still hanging in the air. There was the empty space beside the cake where a mother should have stood. Lauren reached for my arm, but I moved my hand before she touched me. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, but I saw her feel it. She had expected access to me even after exclusion. That had always been the arrangement. She could push me away and I would still stay within reach. Not that night. Mom, you are misunderstanding, she said. Her voice trembled just enough to sound sympathetic to anyone who wanted to believe her. I was trying to protect you. You hate attention. You always say you do not like fuss. I said I do not like being pitted, I answered. That is not the same thing. Andrew looked at me then with a kind of sadness that made me uncomfortable. Not pity. Recognition. As if pieces of his own marriage were arranging themselves into a shape he did not like. Lauren, he said quietly, why is your mother sitting at table 17? Lauren's face tightened. The planner suddenly became very interested in the candles near the cake. Eleanor drew in a slow breath. I almost felt sorry for Lauren. Almost. Because there is a particular fear in being seen without the lighting you chose for yourself. She wanted to be comfortable, Lauren said. Came out too fast. I did not, I said. The words were simple. That made them difficult to decorate. Lauren turned to me with a look I had known since she was a teenager, the one that warned me I was embarrassing her. But I was 68 years old. I had survived widowhood, unpaid bills, winter mornings waiting for buses, and the humiliation of asking a pharmacist which prescription could be delayed until Friday. My daughter's glare no longer had the power she thought it did. Caleb lowered the contract slightly. Mrs. Whitaker, he said, because the extended family album and reception slideshow were paid add-ons, I need your approval for any changes to the shot list or final selections. Lauren turned sharply toward him. That is ridiculous. It is my wedding. Yes, Caleb said. And it is her contract. The sentence settled over the room like a clean white sheet covering something everyone had been pretending not to see. My hand rested on the edge of the clipboard. The paper was smooth under my fingers. For months that contract had felt like love. Now it felt like proof. Not proof that I mattered to Lauren. Proof that I had mattered to myself enough to stop lying. I looked at my daughter. She was waiting for me to fix it. I knew that expression. I had seen it when she forgot a school project and needed poster board at midnight. When her first apartment deposit fell short. When a bridesmaid canceled on her fitting and she called me crying from a parking lot. Fix this, her eyes said. Make me look good again. For most of my life I would have smiled for the room. I would have made a joke about mothers getting sentimental. I would have stepped into the picture or out of it depending on what caused her less discomfort. But something inside me had gone still. Not cold. Clear. Caleb, I said. Yes, Mrs. Whitaker. Please. Continue with the ceremony and couple portraits already completed. Those belong to the day, and I will not take that from them. Lauren's shoulders lowered a fraction. She thought mercy meant surrender. It did not. But remove the extended family album package, I continued, and cancel the reception slideshow. The planner looked up sharply. Lauren's face changed. No, she said. Mom, no. We already announced the slideshow. I nodded. I know. It is part of the reception. It was part of what I paid for. Andrew closed his eyes briefly. Eleanor pressed her lips together. Caleb made a note on the contract with the same steady professionalism he had carried all evening. Lauren stepped closer, lowering her voice. You are punishing me. I looked at her, really looked at her. The baby I had rocked. The teenager I had forgiven. The bride who had measured my worth against her photographs. No, I said. You wanted memories without me. I am simply making sure you do not have to remember who paid for them. Her eyes filled, but I could not tell whether it was sorrow or embarrassment. Maybe she did not know either. The room remained quiet. Then, somewhere near table 17, Marjorie whispered, Good for her. It was not loud. Did not need to be. For the first time that day, I did not feel hidden. I felt visible. And I did not have to stand in a picture for it to be true. After Caleb marked the change on the contract, the reception tried to continue. That is what expensive events do when something honest happens. They smooth the linens. They turn the music back on. They refill the glasses and hope dignity can be restored by pretending no one heard what was said. The band began playing again, softer this time. Not quite cheerful. Not quite sad. People returned to their chairs with the careful movements of guests who had just witnessed something they would discuss in their cars later. Lauren stood near the cake with Andrew, her smile gone flat at the edges. I could see her whispering to him, one hand pressed against the front of her gown as if holding herself together. Andrew did not touch her back. That small absence said more than anger would have. Eleanor spoke to the planner in a low voice, probably asking whether anything could be salvaged. The planner glanced at me once, then quickly looked away. I went back to table 17. Frank stood when I approached. It was old-fashioned and unnecessary, but I appreciated it more than I expected. Marjorie reached across the table and touched my hand. Only once. Only lightly. I am sorry, she said. I nodded because I did not trust myself to answer. There is a strange loneliness that comes after telling the truth. People think truth makes you feel free right away. Sometimes it only leaves you standing in the wreckage with your hands shaking where no one can see. I sat down and placed my purse on my lap. The card for Lauren was still inside. For my beautiful daughter. From the first woman who loved you. The words felt different now. Not false. Just unfinished. A server came by with slices of wedding cake. White cake with raspberry filling. Lauren's favorite since childhood. When she was 10, I made her a raspberry birthday cake from a boxed mix and a jar of jam because that was what we could afford. She said it tasted fancy. 4 years after that, I made the same cake every birthday. Tonight, the slice placed before me had perfect layers, buttercream smooth as porcelain, a sugar flower on the side. I took one bite. It was very good. Tasted like nothing. Across the room, Andrew walked away from Lauren and came toward my table. The conversations around me softened. He stopped beside my chair, looking less like a groom now and more like a young man who had just discovered a locked room in his own house. Mrs. Whitaker, he said, may I sit for a moment? I gestured to the empty chair beside me. He sat carefully, as if afraid one wrong movement might break what little peace was left. I did not know, he said. I believe you. He looked down at his hands. His wedding ring was new, bright, almost too shiny. She told me you wanted a small role, that you did not like being involved in planning, that you were uncomfortable around crowds. I almost smiled. I was the one who taught her how to address envelopes properly. Andrew let out a breath that might have become a laugh on another day. Then his face tightened again. She also said her parents were not able to help. Her father has been gone 12 years. I know. I am sorry. He would have come in his old brown suit and cried through the whole ceremony. Andrew looked toward the dance floor, where Lauren stood with her bridesmaids, pretending not to watch us. I wish he had been here, he said quietly. I looked at him then. There was no performance in his face. No polished sympathy. Only discomfort and something honest beneath it. That makes two of us. For a while neither of us spoke. The music filled the space between us. Then Andrew said, "The slideshow. Was it important?" To Lauren, yes. I mean to you. I looked toward the blank screen at the far end of the ballroom, the one that had been meant to show childhood pictures, engagement photographs, and family memories carefully arranged to make everyone feel sentimental. I had spent 3 evenings gathering old photos for it. Lauren in pigtails on the porch. Lauren missing her front teeth. Lauren asleep against Robert's shoulder at the county fair. Lauren in her cap and gown, holding flowers I bought from a grocery store because the florist was too expensive. I had scanned each photo at the library after closing. I had labeled them by year. I had sent them to Caleb with notes. Use this one if she does not mind. Her father loved this day. Do not include the one where she is crying. She would hate that. Was it important to me? Yes. Not because I needed credit. Because I thought memories might soften what pride had hardened. It was, I said. But not enough to be used as decoration after I was treated like a stain. Andrew closed his eyes briefly. I am sorry. You already said that. I mean it more now. That time I did smile. A small one. Across the room, Lauren began walking toward us. Her dress whispered against the floor. Her face had been repaired with fresh powder, but her eyes were bright in a way makeup could not fix. Andrew stood before she reached the table. Lauren, he said. We need to talk. We will, she answered quickly. After the reception. Right now, I need to speak with my mother. My mother. The words arrived dressed for company. She had not called me that when she told people I was overwhelmed. She had not called me that when she removed me from the cake photo. But now, with Andrew watching, I had been promoted back into the family. I looked at her hands. They were clasped tightly around her bouquet. White roses. Tiny pearls. Ribbon wrapped so neatly it looked untouched by weather or work. Mom, she said. I think this has gotten out of hand. I set my fork beside the cake plate. Has it? You embarrassed me. The sentence was so clean, so immediate, that for a moment I simply stared at her. Not because it surprised me, because it explained everything. In Lauren's mind, the wound was not what she had done. The wound was that other people had seen it. Andrew's jaw tightened. Eleanor had moved closer now, hovering near the next table, pretending to adjust her bracelet. Several guests were listening without looking like they were listening. Lauren lowered her voice. I was stressed. I said things badly. But canceling the slideshow is too much. People are expecting it. I looked at the blank screen again. Then at my daughter. People expected me to be in your life too. Her lips parted. No answer came. I reached into my purse and took out the card I had written that morning. For a moment I considered giving it to her. Then I placed it on the table between us. Not in her hand. Not yet. You can read it later, I said. Lauren stared at the envelope as if it were another contract she did not want opened. I just wanted everything to be perfect, she whispered. I nodded. I know. And I did know. That was the tragedy of it. She had wanted a perfect wedding so badly that she forgot imperfect people are the ones who love you through real life. She wanted flawless pictures. But families are not made of flawless pictures. They are made of unpaid bills, late-night phone calls, borrowed cars, second-hand dresses, hospital waiting rooms, and mothers who stand quietly at the edge until they finally remember they were never meant to live there. Caleb approached from the side of the room, camera resting against his chest. Mrs. Whitaker, he said gently. I still have time before the light is gone. Would you like one portrait outside? Lauren looked at him, then at me. For the first time all evening, the choice belonged to me. I stood slowly and picked up my purse. Yes, I said. I think I would. Caleb led me out through the side doors, away from the music, away from the cake, away from the room where my daughter was learning that appearances can be more fragile than glass. The evening air felt cooler than before. The sun had dropped low behind the hotel, turning the garden edges gold and soft. Most of the guests stayed inside, but a few had followed at a respectful distance, pretending to admire the flowers or take phone calls near the fountain. I did not mind. For once, being seen did not feel like being judged. It felt like being returned to myself. Caleb stopped near the stone path where the white roses climbed over the arch. The same place where Lauren had asked me to step aside. Only now the chairs were empty, the petals along the aisles slightly crushed from all the shoes that had passed over them. A wedding leaves traces after everyone claps. So does a lifetime. Right here, he asked. I looked at the arch. I thought of standing there earlier with my purse in my hands, trying to make my body smaller inside my own daughter's day. Then I shook my head. No, not there. Caleb waited. I turned toward a quieter corner of the garden, where an old oak tree shaded a wooden bench. There were no flowers arranged around it. No ribbons. No polished aisle. Just roots lifting the grass a little and late sunlight resting on the leaves. There, I said. That looks honest. Caleb nodded. We walked slowly. My shoes sank slightly into the grass, and I was glad they were old. New shoes would have made me worry about the dirt. Old shoes know how to survive a little ground. I sat on the bench and placed my purse beside me. For a moment, I did not know what to do with my hands. In family photographs, mothers are usually holding someone. A baby, a bouquet, a husband's arm, a daughter's shoulder. Without anyone beside me, my hands felt exposed. Caleb seemed to understand. Just rest them in your lap, he said. You do not have to perform anything. That sentence nearly undid me. You do not have to perform anything. All day I had watched people perform. Lauren performed grace. Eleanor performed welcome. Guests performed surprise. Even I had performed calm so thoroughly that no one could see the bruise beneath it. I folded my hands in my lap, the left thumb resting over the right, the way Robert used to tease me for doing when I was thinking too hard. Caleb lifted the camera. Then he lowered it again. Would you like to take the pearls out from under your collar? I touched them. The fake pearls. The last gift. I drew them forward gently, letting them rest against the gray fabric of my dress. They are not real, I said. Caleb smiled, not with pity but with warmth. That does not matter. I looked past him toward the ballroom windows. Through the glass I could see Lauren standing near Andrew. They were not speaking. Eleanor hovered nearby, holding herself like a woman who wanted to manage a problem without touching it. The blank slideshow screen still hung behind the dance floor. White. Empty. Waiting for memories that would not be shown. Caleb took the first photograph. The camera clicked softly. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a small sound marking the moment I stopped apologizing for existing. Turn your face a little toward the light, he said. I did. The sun touched the side of my cheek. I wondered if it showed every line. Every year. Every sleepless night. Every dollar stretched thin. Every hope I had folded and refolded until it fit inside what Lauren needed. For most of my life, I thought lines on a woman's face were proof that time had taken something from her. That evening I understood they were receipts. Proof of payment. Proof of presence. Proof I had lived through more than my daughter had ever cared to know. Behind Caleb, Andrew stepped out of the side doors. He did not rush. He did not call attention to himself. He simply walked down the stone path until he stood a few feet away. Mrs. Whitaker, he said. I turned toward him. His expression was careful but not polished. Would it be all right if I stood with you for one photo? I looked at him for a long moment. He had married my daughter that afternoon. Whatever happened after tonight, that fact would not disappear. He was part of the story now, whether the story remained easy or not. Why? I asked. The question was not harsh. It was necessary. Andrew glanced back toward the ballroom, then at me. Because someone should have stood beside you today. The air changed. Not enough for anyone else to notice, maybe, but enough for me. I moved my purse from the bench. Andrew sat beside me, leaving a respectful space between us. Caleb raised the camera again. Through the glass I saw Lauren watching. Her face was unreadable from that distance, but I knew her posture. Rigid. Offended. Afraid. Maybe hurt too. I did not wish hurt on her. That surprised me. Even after everything, I did not want my daughter destroyed. I wanted her awake. There is a difference. Caleb took the picture. Then Frank and Marjorie appeared near the garden entrance. Marjorie lifted one hand, hesitant. "Margaret," she called softly, "may we join for one?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because life can be strange in ways grief cannot predict. The woman who had met me less than 2 hours earlier now looked kinder than the child I had carried. Soon, 2 of Robert's old friends from Dayton stepped forward from the patio. I had not even known Lauren had invited them. One of them, Mr. Hanley, removed his hat and said, "Robert would want a picture with his girl." His girl. Not Lauren. Me. My throat tightened, but I held steady. Caleb arranged us under the oak tree. No grand pose. No forced elegance. Just people standing close enough to say I was not invisible. Inside, the music started again, brighter than the mood deserved. Outside, the camera clicked several times. Each click felt like a thread being tied back to something I thought had been cut. When it was done, Caleb lowered the camera and looked at the screen. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "This is the best photograph I took today." I did not ask to see it. Not yet. I was afraid if I looked too soon I would cry, and I had promised myself the day would not get that from me. Instead, I turned toward the ballroom. Lauren still stood behind the glass. For once, she was the one outside the picture, watching someone else be chosen. I picked up my purse and smoothed my dress. The gray fabric looked the same as before. Clearance rack. Hand altered. Pressed twice. But I no longer felt poor in it. I felt paid for. By years. By love. By the quiet dignity no one can edit out unless you hand them the right. The reception ended more quietly than it began. There was still music. There was still cake. There were still guests dancing under chandeliers, pretending the evening had settled back into shape. But something had shifted and everyone knew it. Lauren moved through the ballroom with a smile that looked newly careful, as if each expression had to be checked before she wore it. Andrew stayed beside her when he needed to, but his eyes kept drifting toward the garden doors. Eleanor did not approach me again. Neither did the planner. By 10 o'clock, I had thanked Frank and Marjorie, said goodnight to Robert's old friends, and walked outside with my purse tucked under my arm. The hotel valet asked if I needed my car brought around. I told him I was taking a cab. He looked surprised for half a second, then nodded politely. I stood beneath the awning while the night air cooled my face. My feet hurt. My back ached. The pearls at my throat felt heavier than they had that morning. But I was not broken. That surprised me most of all. I had spent so many years believing Lauren's approval was something I had to earn over and over, like a bill that came due each month. One wrong dress. One wrong word. One reminder of where she came from. And suddenly the balance changed. Suddenly I was behind again. That night, standing outside a luxury hotel in a gray dress I had altered myself, I realized I had been paying on an account my daughter had no intention of closing. A cab pulled up to the curb. Before I got in, I heard my name. Not Mom. Not Mother. Margaret. I turned and saw Lauren standing just beyond the glass doors, holding the envelope I had left on the table. Her wedding dress looked too white under the hotel lights. For a moment she looked very young. Then she stepped closer. "Are you really leaving?" she asked. "Yes." Her fingers tightened around the envelope. "You did not even say goodbye." I looked at her carefully. "All day you made sure there was no place for me to belong. Leaving is not the same as disappearing." She looked down. I waited for an apology, not because I needed one to breathe, because some small stubborn part of me still wanted my daughter to find her way to decency before the night ended. Instead, she said, "Can the slideshow still be restored if I talk to Caleb tomorrow?" There it was. The answer. The final little window into what hurt her most. Not my absence. Not my humiliation. The missing display. The unfinished performance. I felt something inside me grow very quiet. No, Lauren. Her head lifted. But those photos matter. Yes, I said. They do. Then why would you take them away? I thought of the old pictures I had scanned at the library after closing. Her first bike. Her graduation cap. Robert holding her on his shoulders at the 4th of July parade. The raspberry cake with crooked candles. The life behind the polished life. I did not take the memories away, I said. I only stopped paying to have them shown in a room where I was being erased. Her eyes filled again. This time I saw a flicker of something beneath the embarrassment. Maybe regret. Maybe fear. Maybe only the first discomfort of seeing herself without flattering light. I was stressed, she whispered. I wanted everything to be perfect. I nodded. I know. That is why it hurt. You looked at the woman who gave you everything imperfect and decided I did not match. She had no answer. Behind her, Andrew appeared near the doorway but did not interrupt. He looked tired. Older than he had that afternoon. Weddings are supposed to begin things, but sometimes they reveal what has already begun. I touched the pearls at my throat. Your father used to say beauty was how someone treated you when no one important was watching. Lauren closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked at the envelope again. I read the card, she said. I waited. She swallowed. I forgot you wrote like that. That almost made me smile. Almost. No, sweetheart. You forgot. I felt like that. The cab driver shifted gently in his seat, patient but present. I opened the door. Lauren took one step forward. Can I call you tomorrow? I looked at her face, searching for the child I had loved and the woman she had become. Both were there. That was the painful part. Yes, I said. You can call. Relief crossed her face too quickly. But I may not answer, I added. She went still. I need time to stop being convenient. The words came out softer than I expected. Not bitter. Not cruel. Just true. I got into the cab and closed the door before she could ask me to soften them. As we pulled away, I looked back once. Lauren stood beneath the awning, holding the envelope against the front of her dress. Andrew stood a few feet behind her. Neither of them moved. 3 weeks later, Caleb mailed me a small package. Inside was one printed photograph in a simple white mat. The portrait beneath the oak tree. I sat at my kitchen table in Dayton and looked at it for a long time. There I was in the gray dress. Old shoes hidden by the grass. Fake pearls catching the last light. Andrew seated respectfully beside me. Frank and Marjorie standing nearby. Robert's old friends behind us, smiling like they had brought part of him back for one evening. I did not look rich. I did not look glamorous. I looked tired. I looked lined. I looked real. And for the first time in years, I did not study a picture of myself and wonder what my daughter would want removed. There was a note from Caleb tucked behind the frame. I thought you should have the first print. This was the truest image of the day. A month after the wedding, Lauren called. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was smaller than usual. Not broken. Just less polished. She asked if she could visit. I told her she could come for coffee on Saturday morning, not brunch, not a public place, not somewhere she could perform being a daughter. Just my kitchen. My table. My rules. When Saturday came, I put on coffee and set out 2 mugs. I did not bake raspberry cake. I did not polish the house into something more acceptable. I left the photograph on the sideboard where she would see it when she walked in. At 9 o'clock, a car door closed outside. I looked through the curtain and saw Lauren standing on the walkway in jeans, a plain sweater, and no makeup I could notice from the window. She looked nervous. Good. Nervous means a person understands something can be lost. Before I opened the door, I touched the frame of the photograph once. Not for courage. For memory. Then I let my daughter knock. I was still her mother. But I was no longer the woman standing at the edge of the picture, waiting to be invited in.